What's up, 12s? Happy St. Patrick's Day, and thanks for joining us on the Seahawks Collective, presented by Hog Media. It's always fun when you get to talk about the reigning Super Bowl champions. We're going to break down what it might take to go back to back. But first things first, we got free agency in the draft. So let's bring in the best Seahawks insiders to get us all caught up with it. And yes, you might notice we are missing one of our own. We're missing Hawk blogger Brian Hauser tonight, but no worries because we've got Michael Shandugar covering the Hawks for The Athletic and Rob Staten on the Seahawks draft blog. And Rob, I'm sure you have many words because you are in the prime of your season of Seahawks coverage. But let us know what questions you all have for Mike and Rob and what you're wondering about what the Seahawks have and maybe haven't done in free agency so far and what the 2026 draft class might look like. But before we jump into it, let's say hello to Mike and Rob. Mike, how are you doing today? I don't see any green on either of you. That's all I'm going to say. I don't see any St. Patrick's Day green.
For the holiday. I have some cash. Oh, you know what I have? I have confetti from the field right here. Yeah. This is from the game. It's up in the B. I'm upstairs in the house today because there's this guy outside fixing my brakes, which they sound like my brakes sound like two linemen hitting each other right now. So I'm upstairs. But yeah, I got confetti.
Hey, you win. That's way better than any Seahawks merch. And Rob, we were talking offline real quick about your Seahawks merch, the hat. When did you get the Seahawks hat? The Super Bowl hat.
So I bought the Super Bowl hat in a mall in San Jose the day before the Super Bowl because I just wanted something with Super Bowl on it. And then we went to like about 3 other shops that had loads of Super Bowl stuff. So I didn't need to buy the hat as a desperation purchase. But I have spent far too much money on Super Bowl merchandise. It is probably going to cost me a family holiday at some point this year because I've spent so much. It's cleaned out my bank account. I hope the good people of Simply Seattle appreciate the business that they have been sent from the United Kingdom.
Hey, we got to get you more of a discount. Maybe Brian can help us out with that. Yes, no hesitation. Yes, we do. Well, I still have no Super Bowl winning gear yet, so I got to get on top of mine. But Mike, I got to ask you because it was reported this week that the NBA will be meeting to decide whether they'll move forward with plans to add a team in Seattle potentially. So what's it been like in the city and how have they responded?
Yeah, no, that was crazy news. You know, I had a radio show in Washington State when the whole thing with the Kings was going down. And I remember how people behaved, you know, like people calling into the show, just like kind of how social media was at the time. We just thought we were going to get the Kings. And then since then that created like this, all right, well, don't hit me until it's going to happen section of the Seattleites, which I fall into as well. Like all these marginal little updates. Adam Silver says this, I don't care. They coming or not, like, let me know. But now this seems, you know, I've talked to people who are like, really close to like how this is working, and yeah, they're like it's real this time. And when the Thunder were in the NBA Finals in June, I did a story on like Sonics fans, and part of it was going to this bar in Seattle where they were having like this hate watch every game of the NBA Finals. They were just like, come here, root for the Pacers every night, let's go crazy. And I think I went 2 nights, then games 2 and 3 maybe, and did a story on that. And just for that story, it was a reminder to me that there is just people of a certain age who the Sonics are their first love in this town, you know, because they precede the existence of the Mariners and the Seahawks by several years, I believe. So that is super cool. Everyone's super hyped. Can't wait. You know, some of my homies who like cover college are like, yo, Mike, is the Athletic hiring a Sonics beat writer? Let me know. I'm like, I haven't been told anything. But there's just so many levels to how hyped people are. I can't wait.
And you would be the guy to contact. Rob, would you start following a Seattle NBA team if it came to be?
Well, I actually went to a Sonics game before I ever went to a Seahawks game. So I remember going to the Key Arena, and it was really the weather was absolutely pissing it down. I don't know if that's how you describe rain in America, but that's how we describe it over here. It was that bad.
There's a lot in Seattle, so it's just normal.
And they played the San Antonio Spurs, and it cost me a $5 to get in. Like, that's £5 English, so it was $10. The exchange rate was favorable at the time in 2006. 2006, yeah. So 20 years ago, I did go to a Sonics game. Would I start? I have to say, from what little I've seen of the NBA recently, it doesn't seem as good as it used to be. But then I follow the fortunes of the Vancouver Canucks, and I'm all set for them to be sent to Oklahoma City as well, based on how their season is going. So I probably would adopt the Sonics and follow them, but not perhaps with the same vinegar that I follow the Seahawks.
Well, hey, hopefully the future NBA team in Seattle will be walking into a back-to-back city with the Seattle Seahawks going back to the Super Bowl. But since we last talked, the Seahawks have extended some familiar faces and signed some new ones. But let's start with the position group that has really been the biggest question for the Seahawks this offseason, because if the Hawks want to run it back, they might need a running back, right? And so the first move was acquiring Emanuel Wilson from the Green Bay Packers, signed with his childhood team he put out on X, which is so very special for him. So, Mike, what should we know about this former Packer?
Yeah, well, first of all, it is just, as someone who's from Seattle, I'm 33. It just blows my mind to see these guys who are just from these other parts of the country who are like, yeah, I grew up loving the Seahawks. You know, when Byron Murphy the second said it when they drafted him, he was just like, yeah, Seahawks my favorite team. And it's not just like blowing smoke because that's the team that drafted them. Sometimes you do get a little bit of that. No, this is like genuine, like, love and admiration for this team. And a lot of it goes back to like the Pete Carroll era. But even then, I think Emmanuel, his fandom precedes that as well. So that's just like cool. Nicky Manwari was the same way. It's like, yeah, I'm a big Seahawks fan. The Cam Chancellor connection made a lot of sense for him there. But like Murph lived in Dallas, you know, the kid growing up in Texas, in Cowboy land, and was like, oh yeah, no, I love the Seahawks. I love Marshawn Lynch. He was a running back growing up. So like to just get another one of those guys, it just is crazy, you know. I don't know where Emmanuel's from, but just that's just nuts to me. That's first off. Second, you know, the first thing I did once I saw that they signed him, I was like, how much does he weigh? Because of the Josh Jacobs fantasy owner last year, I had to rely on him a little bit. So I watched him. I was like, man, this guy's tough. In the first, I think he's listed 226, which I believe is heavier than any other running back on the Seahawks. So that just jumped out. I was like, yeah, that's probably what they're thinking with this signing. Like, we can't replace Ken's speed in free agency. That's just hard to find. It's hard to find in the draft, to be honest. Ken ran 4.3. So, but maybe they're thinking, all right, let's see how we can get some physicality there, particularly with Zach, knee on the mend. And then what do you know? Like an hour after I did that, I think John Snyder went on his radio show and he's like, yeah, you know, shout out to my staff. They were like, yeah, got this 230-pound guy with great feet who runs super physical. I was like, boom. There you go. I know what these guys are thinking, and that's the reason why I like it, because again, there's like skill set replacement that you're trying to do when you lose some of these guys. With Kobe, we'll probably get to, like, you need range. With Ken, you would like some playmaking, like legitimate like speed. With Zach, you would like some power, and sometimes that's just not available to you in free agency. But this was that was the first thing that jumped out. I haven't done like a full on tape dive quite yet, but like my initial impression was like, yeah, this makes sense. I think his deal's like $1 million and some change, and it just doesn't, it gives you a guy in the room, but also doesn't preclude you from drafting a running back if you want to in the first round.
Yeah, I want to ask Rob all about that. And when I was watching some of his highlights just quickly, it was like the dude hit a brick wall and then kept going. And sometimes it was his own offensive line. You're like, this dude is tough, to say the least. But Rob, before I ask you if you saw this name coming for the Seahawks, Mike quickly alluded to it. So give us your elevator pitch, because for new Seahawks Collective fans who might be watching, like some of the Seahawks players who might not have grown up in Seattle, they said that they love the Seahawks. And for you, you're not from the States, but you love the Seahawks. So give us your elevator pitch on how you became a Seahawks fan.
Well, it was the first time I ever went to CenturyLink Field, as it was at the time, and was there. And as soon as I was an American, I like all sports. Like, I'm a bit sad, so I just follow all sports really, and went to a game just for the experience. And I knew within about 10 minutes of the players coming out of the tunnel, and they've got the 12 flag. The guy, can't remember which player was, runs out with the flag at the front, and then the flag goes up, and all the noise and everything. I just knew straight away that this was for me. So I kind of adopted the team there, and I've not missed a game since. That will be 20 years ago. My first game was it was great to see Cooper Kupp, so that his first game watching the Seahawks live was the Green Bay Monday Night Football game 20 years ago, which was my first game as well. So it was quite cool to hear him sort of talking about that occasion, because that's exactly how I felt there. I have a hilarious picture. I showed this to Brian at the Super Bowl, of my wife at that game, because I only managed to secure us standing room only tickets, but she wasn't aware of that. So when we got there, and it was snowing and it was crazy. And I've got a picture of her looking soaked, even though it was snow rather than rain. And she's got my coat on top of her coats, and she looks absolutely furious with me, like she wants to launch me off the top of the stadium roof. So that was quite an experience, that. And I just think, because of the success they had, I interviewed Milton Williams before he was drafted, and he said the Seahawks were his favorite team because he played Madden, and the Madden that he loved the most had Sean Alexander on the front. So he fell in love with the Seahawks. And it's amazing how they have sort of adopted, like a lot of people have adopted the Seahawks. And can I also say, because Mike said that he had Josh Jacobs. I also had Josh Jacobs in a very competitive fantasy league last year. And there was one game where I was like, really didn't know who to select. Like, I had a couple of other running back options. And I thought, I'm going to stick with Josh Jacobs. A big game against the Bears. The Bears say he's playing, he's active and all this. And then freaking Matt LaFleur just played Emanuel Wilson for the whole game. And then when Josh Jacobs came out,
that hurt, man.
He basically had one leg. And it was like, why are you playing him? Just don't play him. Every time he's on the field taking a snap, Josh Jacobs, you're hurting your team. You should have just said, he's inactive. Emmanuel Wilson's getting the carries. So I kind of like hate watched Emmanuel Wilson that game. But he had a good game, but it was really frustrating because he was like, I know I want Josh Jacobs to be doing this. I need him to get some points. And he didn't get any points. So I'm happy that he's in Seattle for that experience of watching him play well, but watching him play well while cursing at the TV while he was playing well.
Well, hopefully this next season will be a very different experience watching Emanuel Wilson for you, Rob. But for you, Mike, when you expect to see him out on the field in a Seahawks uniform, how do you see the Seahawks using him? Because we saw, especially later in the season, the Seahawks have a lot of success using both K9 and Zach Charbonnet.
Yeah, I think it's kind of set up for a nice little lightning thunder. What are the Lions call it? It's like Sonics and Knuckles or something like that. Or I guess that's broken up now. But like 1-2 punch situation there. 'Cause I do think you need both. Having talked to, who was really cool talking about running backs was Bobby Wagner, who would talk about, because I used to think the idea of like the change of pace thing was like, it's kind of a little overstated. And then I remember one time Bobby was like telling me, he was like, no, man, that really matters just like mentally for a defense. Of like, all right, we know. I think we were talking about it in the context of Derrick Henry, I think. But it was like, yeah, if you have a guy like that coming in, you have to mentally prepare yourself. Like, all right, cool, buckle up, let's roll. And then if all of a sudden they bring in Keaton Mitchell or the small, fast guy, whoever that is on that team, there's a shift there. And if you're not like on it, you will behave differently. And I think I've ever since that convo with him and then asking other linebackers in particular, it seems to impact them more than any other position group. Talking to them, that's kind of changed my view on that a little bit. And I also in fantasy had Ken Walker. I had a very frustrating fantasy year. But I see the value of like, all right, hit him with this, then hit him with that, and hit him with this, and hit him with that. And so I think that's where you're looking at like Emmanuel, whoever this is in there, whether that's Kenny, whether that's George. They still have Velus Jones Jr., Cam Akers, Jacardia Wright. Like it could be anybody that's the other side of that. But having that clearly defined role of like, all right, when we want to just hit you in the mouth, we're 12 personnel. Robbie Oots is on the field. It's like very clear statement of how you want to play. You guys know Mike McDonald loves that. It's like, he always says like, I felt us, or I felt that guy.
Yeah.
Like Emmanuel,
I bet you could write an
guy.
essay on Mike McDonald quotes.
Oh yeah. Yes. You can. All his slogans and isms. I have an entire Google Doc that's just called Mike McDonald slogans. Whenever I need to refer back to them and all their definitions. But yeah, when they want to be felt, that's when they'll have Emmanuel out there, which is good. Because again, I've come around on that over the last few years. Every team needs that if you want to play a certain way and have it, show up on tape.
Well, especially too, what you saw with the Seahawks later in the season when Zach Charbonnet went down, probably because K9 wasn't taking on all the load. He still had gas left in the tank to be able to finish the way that he finished. So I think there's positives on that front as well. But I'm seeing it a lot in the comments, and the headliner today was that the Dolphins are trading Jalen Waddle to the Denver Broncos. And the reason I bring it up is because it might have opened a door to a discussion. I know, Rob, you were interested in potentially seeing a Miami running back in a different shade of blue.
Yes. So I have what we call over here a bit of a man crush on. I've actually used AI.
I think we call it that same thing over here too. We heard the same
Cool.
phrase.
That's good. It's good that we have some similarities. So I had a look. I've been mispronouncing his name for so long. It is Devon A. Chan, isn't it? So it's not a Shane, whatever I was saying. So I want to get this right. So you need to shout to me if I get it wrong again. So I think he is misunderstood as an actual NFL talent. I think he's one of the best players in the league. Like, you actually look at what he has achieved in sort of recent history, it is unbelievable. Like, I had some data, I wrote about this today, that only Jonathan Taylor, Derrick Henry, and Bijan Robinson had more yards after contact than Devon Achane in 2025. He nearly had 1,000 yards after contact, let alone 1,000-yard season. That was after contact. He was the only running back to average over 4 yards after contact per attempt. The nearest was Bijan Robinson, who was way behind him per attempt. No running back had more plus 10-yard runs last year. He had 40 10-plus yard runs. He only fumbled once. His yards per attempt, 5.7. Again, an absolute country mile ahead of every other running back in the NFL. And then if you actually look at, this is unfair on Ken Walker, because I don't think it's a fair comparison to put Ken alongside Achane, because he's just been so productive. But he blows Ken Walker out of the water, out of the sea with the amount of the touchdowns, the reception yardage. He even had a kick return touchdown in the last 2 seasons. He's like on a different level, like a completely different level in terms of production and talent and everything. I think he is up there with, if you were to say, like, who are the best young running backs in the NFL, you probably put Robinson at number 1. I think Achane's number 2. And if you can, I don't know whether the Dolphins are trading for a reasonable price. They got a first and a third for Waddle. They might end up looking for something similar for Achane. I think eventually you do have to be somewhat disciplined and say you can't give that much up. But people have been debating, like, should you trade 32 for this guy? And I have to say, like, I've run through this draft, and we've talked about it a fair bit already. This is not a good draft class. There's a reason why the Denver Broncos have just given up a first and a third for a receiver who's not had 1,000-yard season for the last 2 seasons. He's not had 1,000 yards. And they've been prepared. They think Jalen Waddle is better than the sizable options at receiver in this draft. So that's what the Broncos have decided to do. I don't think you're getting a great player at 32. You're either going to get a fairly decent cornerback who you might be able to turn into something more, but I've been saying is going to be like the Paul Richardson of cornerbacks, because that's who they took after they won the last Super Bowl last time. Someone who's decent, might not be a 2-contract player. Like, do you want to do that? You might be drafting Jadarian Price at 32. That's another running back. That's what Daniel Jeremiah mocked them today, and I think it's very realistic. Like, do you want to draft a different running back, or do you want to go and get one of the best ones in the league? I think it's something that warrants more consideration than perhaps some people are prepared to think. He's so freaking talented that I just keep thinking, if you put this guy in Seattle, how are you stopping him? Like, the defense is good. It needs replenishing, but you've got other picks. You've got the chance. You could go and sign Von Miller after the draft. Offensively, if you put Achane in this offense with every other weapon returning and your O-line returning and your quarterback returning, I just think that could be a nasty scene for the rest of the league. So I'm down.
Well, Mike, it seems like Rob is all in on this, but how do you see this realistically playing out? Do you think the Dolphins would be willing to give him up, and then in part the Seahawks being able to pick him up?
Oh, yeah. I think, the Dolphins are clearly tearing that thing down to the studs, as they should. Some teams are just in that position where it's like, if you want to live in the 8-9 world and then be an injury away from 6-11 any given year, then just keep running it back with what you got, or like do what the Saints were doing, which just keep swiping it on the credit card. Sure, do that to your blue in the face. Some teams, though, just need to just trade everything, even though this draft is not particularly highly regarded. Some teams just got to do that, and that means getting rid of Waddle, getting rid of Devin, or Devon. Dang, we don't know say his last name or his first name. That's unfortunate.
Achane. Achane.
What's the first name though? Is it Devin? Devon?
Devon, I believe. Devon.
Devon.
Let us know in the chat who knows specifically. I think Devon.
It could be either way. I was saying Spoon's name wrong on draft night until I think they introduced him. I was like, oh, it's Devin, because I thought it was Devon. Anyway, yeah, I definitely think you can call the Miami GM and say, yo, what's up, man? What you want? The tricky thing is, and so Rob knows the draft class better than I do. That just you got the fact that, yes, in this year, let's use Jadarian Price. It's a good example, I feel like, because I'm with Daniel Jeremiah. I do think that's realistic. That's the other Notre Dame running back. You get Jadarian, who's not as good of a player as Etienne, but you get him for 4 years, a lot cheaper, cost controlled. You get the better player, give up your first, and you have to this time next year, like, all right, do we give him the contract Ken Walker got now? Is the difference in like resource allocation the same as the difference in talent between the two guys?
It's a great question, and the price thing is a big thing. So Jadarian Price would cost $2.6 million cap hit this year, so that's considerably cheaper than Devin Achane would be. And then next year, well, the highest that Price would cost you would be $4.6 million in the fourth year of his contract. So then he's got the fifth year option. So you're never getting above $5 million a year for 4 years. And there is part of me that thinks the Seahawks want that kind of value. Like, they maybe think that someone like Jadarian Price can come in, can start for them at running back, can give them really cheap value at that position, and it means they don't have to worry about it for 4 years, which is kind of what they've had with Ken Walker and with Zach Charbonnet to an extent. I can definitely see that. I just think there are very few players, very few running backs. I think sort of Jahmyr Gibbs would be one of these. James Cook, Bijan Robinson's another one that I would be thinking, do you know what? I am interested in paying this guy. And I think what you'd have to do is, the Seahawks have a policy of not trading and paying people immediately, because they didn't do that. They did that with Percy Harvin. It didn't work. They're not going to want to do that. I think you'd have to, one, be confident that he's going to come in and be prepared to pay on the final year of his rookie contract. And then you would have the franchise tag up your sleeve. I do think he's worth $14 million a year. So I think if the franchise tag was a similar amount next year to what it is this year, you've got that up your sleeve, and that sets the kind of boundary to pay him potentially next year. Would they want to add that when you've also got to pay Sam Darnold next year, Byron Murphy potentially, Derek Hall? You'll have paid Jackson Smith and Jigba, and you will have paid Devin Witherspoon this year. It's an awful lot of mouths to feed and a lot of cash, guaranteed cash, going into escrow. But they might have a new owner this time next year who will have just spent $8 to $10 billion on a football team. And if you've got that kind of money to spend on a football team, you might have a lot of disposable cash to put in escrow, especially if you want to make a big impression early on. So I think there's interesting conversations about this. I just happen to think that Achane on this team gives you a great chance to be even better than you were last year. And that's a scary thought. It's one of the few areas where you could legitimately get better. I'm not going to cry if they don't do it, but if they did, I'd be pretty excited.
All right, Rob, let me ask you this. How good is let me ask this, Rob, because now I'm curious. How good is Price? How are you on Price?
Yeah, I'm pretty high on Price. I think he's one of the 25 best players in the draft. And what you see from him is, he's good size. He does run through good contact balance, which you're always kind of looking for. When he was given opportunities, and there were very few and far between, it was almost impossible to watch him in the TV copy tape over and over again. So now that we've got the cut-ups of him, it's very easy to see what he's good at. He is explosive. He is quick. He can get outside very decisively. No dancing there. He can put his foot in the ground, turn up field in zone. He's got a level of acceleration that when he gets to the second level, he can run away from people. I think he's a starting running back. But is the kind of player for me that, probably in 4 or 5 years, you're having the same conversation you're having with Ken Walker, is what I would kind of imagine, is that you think, good player. Is he $50 million a year good, though, versus good comp pick in the following years, kind of thing? It's that for me, that I'm not sure he's got that star quality that his teammate at Notre Dame had. Jeremiah Love's just a different animal. So, he's going to go on and be unbelievable, one of the best running backs in the league. Jadarian Price can be a good starter. I think he is, value-wise, worth considering at 32 for sure. I do think that. But Achane's it's just a different cat. He's a special player. I think he is truly, forget the running back position, one of the best players in the NFL.
Wow. In what world, Mike, do you see the Seahawks potentially getting Achane and Price?
Oh, that's an interesting scenario. Maybe one where you don't need to give up your first. It's tough now because now you're talking about some combination of like using your first
Rob's
and
like,
trading
let's
your
go.
second.
I'm all about it.
Thinking,
Yeah.
who's got the cocktails in the Miami Dolphins draft room? If you're getting
Yeah.
that kind of a deal.
Yeah, if you it's always something like that. The tricky part is you do got a defensive coach at the end of the day. So you're talking about, you got 4 picks.
Right.
Um
But he
you're
loves to
like,
run the
and
ball. You never know. He does like to
he
run
does.
the ball.
Yeah, looking at John Snyder's history, it was fascinating to see like he doesn't have a history of like paying running backs on outside of Marshawn. He did multiple times. Probably regrets that third time doing that. But he very clearly values them in the draft as high as any team in the league. I know they were high on Gibbs in his draft. They not high enough to take him at 5, but it wouldn't have surprised me if they'd have took him at like 20 in that class. Obviously took Rashad Penny in the first, taken 3 or 4 running backs in the second round. John has so he very clearly values running the ball. John, that is. Obviously Mike does too, but like John very clearly does. It's just what he's willing to spend to do it. Seems like felt like they were kind of reluctant to do the Chris Carson deal, and then what do you know? I think Chris broke his neck like a month into that deal. So unfortunate for Chris, but if you're the team that paid Chris, you're like, oh, this is why we don't do that. Even the guy we loved, it was just like, see, this is the fear. Same thing when they paid Cam Chancellor, like broke his neck like 2 years, or excuse me, like 2 months into that deal, and it's like, see, this is why we don't usually give guys the third contract. So I think it'd be hard to give both guys just in terms of resource allocation. But I mean, if I haven't done a study yet on a price, probably want to know that from Rob, because I feel like that's probably the safer way to go about it, and get your other needs satisfied. Because I do think, like, if you're getting a starting running back at 32, honestly, if you're getting a starting anything at 32, to be honest, I think that's a win, and that is probably good enough. And then you got the 3 years of team control versus I don't think that John would give any running back, to be honest, $14-15 million a year. It just hasn't gone that well for him with the second contracts on running backs. Like I said, except for like one Marshawn deal aged well, and Marshawn had to like not talk to him for a year to get that, I think. So it's just the history is not great for them trading for this type of guy.
Can I just share, because obviously I've got the notes on Jalen Price. I wrote an article last night, and he was included in it. But just very quickly, this is what Jalen Price, what I wrote about him: acceleration and burst hints at major NFL potential, particularly in his own system. Watching him run outside, hit the edge of decisiveness, then explodes upfield is interesting. Loves to fly outside, stick his foot in the ground and get vertical. Bounces outside but doesn't dance. When he doesn't bounce, he gets downhill quickly, breaking through gaps, and then the fun starts. Equally is patient, letting gaps establish without waste of motion. If he breaks the second level, he'll be a threat to score any time. Gives the impression he would be an excellent fit for Seattle. Great kick returner as well. That's worth pointing out. Despite being spelled as the backup, he had a 20-yard run in 8 games last season. So wow. There's a lot more there. I won't bore you to death with the whole report, but there is talent there. Like, he's somebody that you can imagine that, okay, you put him in week 1, he can run the ball for you. It's I suppose, how much do you want that? If you're not going to trade for anybody, if you just take that out of the equation right now, how much do you want that at starting running back and addressing sort of the Ken Walker replacement with your top pick versus maybe investing in a cornerback, of which there are many? Like, you can get cornerbacks on day 2 in this draft, but do you want to address that straight off the bat and make an investment there? Or is there a pass rusher that you really like, or even an offensive lineman for that matter? But I think Price, and Daniel Jeremiah did that today. That's very interesting. It's something we've been talking about for about 3 weeks now on the blog, that this feels very realistic that Jadarian Price could be Seattle's pick.
Well, Mike, I want to ask you about a running back that the Seahawks already have, and that John Schneider has really shouted his praises in the offseason, George Holani. He'll be back with the Seattle Seahawks. What should fans know about this player and maybe what he already has brought to the team and should bring next season?
You know that saying, like, you ask somebody a question and it's like they say, that's like asking me to pick my favorite kid, and then they try to not to answer. John Snyder has no problem picking his favorite kid, and like he does it in the media quite a bit. Last year, this time it was Jalen Sundell. Like no matter what the question was, he found a way to bring up Jalen Sundell, and that just one game cameo he had against the Packers in 2024. It's like he played really well. And what do you know? Jalen ends up winning the job. In the summer, this last year, it was Zach Charbonnet. It was just like, yeah, Zach can really run. They kept talking about Zach's professionalism, how he carried himself. It was like very much like a soft launch. We talked about this on here of like Zach being their guy. And this year now it's George. Like most of the time when John, whether he's asked about running backs directly or not, and I think in the case of his radio show, he was asked, I believe, about like Kenny McIntosh, I think, or maybe just about the position in general. He was like, yeah, but George Holani now was like really awesome in those two games. Those two games being the NFC Championship and the Super Bowl. And so that just tells me, like, having been around John a little bit and listened to him like that, he would have no problem, if George just balls out in preseason, which we've seen George do. George was already earning snaps last year in the regular season. If he would have no problem if George balls out, and then week one against whoever on what's apparently going to be a Wednesday kickoff. That's weird. Week one, they're rolling out George. George is powerful, super tough. Probably doesn't have, they still would be missing the guy to have that like take off and hit that second level and go type of thing, even though I think George's had some big runs. Kenny McIntosh has as well. But I just think we're seeing like in real time the soft launch, a little bit of like, guys, you got guys being me pretending to be John here. Guys, you keep telling me we need a running back. I'm telling you, watch number 36. The same thing as last year. It's like you guys keep saying we need to like look at the centers, pay what's my man's name that came from Atlanta and went to the Bears? Dahlman. It was like last year, it was like, we need a center. Go get that guy. No, guys, listen to me. From North Dakota State, we already have a guy. It feels very, very similar. And I agree, actually, in this case with John. I think Kenny has shown a lot. George has shown a lot. I just really think it's that one skill set you're missing is just someone who, as Rob just mentioned, is got for the price, like can hit that second level, and then it's a problem. Once you get that, I think you're fine. But like from early downs, just set the tone with your style of play. George can, I think, definitely be that guy.
And Rob, we heard you for a while there get super excited about two other guys, but what would your thoughts be on if the Seahawks really invested in and used George Holani?
Yeah, I think there was a play in the Super Bowl where he kind of, I don't know how to describe it, but he kind of juked away from two defenders, slipped through and got a few extra yards. And you just thought, that is an amazing play. And when he was sort of first arrived in Seattle and you could see him in the preseason games, first of all, you thought there's a player here. There's a really good player here. And they seem to really like him. And I'm all for it. Like if you are going to have to, even if you did spend $3,200 in price, until Charbonnet is ready, whenever that is, and there's no real need to rush him back. If you can open up this competition and see amongst the players that you've got, I mean, I thought, who's the other running back they've got who played in preseason last year? Jacardio, right?
Right.
Yep.
He looked really good as well. So he looked good in preseason. Really enjoyed watching him. Alani's, and then you've got Emanuel Wilson in there. Like in fact, just open up the competition. Like so who can win this some playing time at the start of the year. I think they've got a decent crop there. The one thing that I think we've been sort of talking about here is that they don't have that sort of really dynamic, you beat one guy and all of a sudden that's it. That play that Ken Walker made against the Rams at the start of the second half in week 16, where, the Seahawks are kind of toiling a little bit there and they've not had a good drive since the opening drive of the game. And all of a sudden Ken he beats one guy and it's 50-yard touchdown. Like that's the kind of cheap pointage you need from at least one of the running backs on your team. And I don't think they have that player right now.
Well, he was the Super Bowl MVP for a reason. But let's talk about some of the other guys that the Seahawks have added to the roster over the past few days. They added a corner, Noah Igbenogany. He was a first rounder out of Auburn. He said himself that he actually had the opportunity to come here last year, but now he chose on the right side. You can imagine how that feels to now be a Seattle Seahawk. Mike, what are your thoughts on this addition and what should we know about this player?
Yeah, I think a few things. One, I do like that he can play multiple spots. Can play on the outside, can play on the inside. I think he did more of the latter with the Commanders. Like, didn't light it up with the Commanders. You're not gonna go pull up his tape the last couple of years to see a bunch of like outstanding plays, which is how you get him at the price point they're probably getting him at on a 1-year deal and at this late in free agency. But I do think if you're gonna make this defense, it just feels very hard to be like the excellent at one thing guy. Because around you, look around, there's just so much of like Spoon can do multiple things, Nick can do multiple things. Like, really, honestly, the guy you from a coverage standpoint who was just like, all right, he just excels at this thing is Josh. Josh is really good, and Josh Jobe in press. But even then, he's super tough tackler too. So you feel like you just got to be able to do a bunch of stuff. So I like that as well. I like that everybody who's coming on this team, you can see it in like all their quotes. Like, anybody who follows me on like X, if you notice, like, I'm always really posting what these guys say because I am curious on how their view of the team is, particularly the new guys. All of them are saying some variation of like, this team is physical as hell. So when I'm showing up, I want to be that. Like, I know I need to be that. Like, the tape doesn't really lie. And Noah's one of those guys as well, who's like, all right, I'm looking at this tape. These guys are running and hitting. So when I show up, I gotta fit in for that. And it's very similar to Emanuel Wilson, where it's like, if it works, great. You got a guy not costing you a bunch, but also still doesn't preclude you from, all right, you're at pick 32 and you're like, let's go get the kid from San Diego State. All right, cool. We can still do that, and then open up the competition. I'm not really. I actually like the moves that these guys have been making. I haven't watched the corner the safety from the Colts too much, Rodney Thomas II. But just as an idea of like, all right, we're not gonna break the bank. We're letting these guys walk. We love them. They helped us win a bowl. See you, Ken. See you, Boye. See you, Derek. See you, Reek. You guys you helped us. That's great. But free agency is not really moving us that well for the price point of some of these guys. So let's take some chances here. And if these guys hit, they hit. But we got bodies in place. But at the same time, if we want to take the best player at a spot we need at 32, 64, 96, we're in a good spot.
Mike, I love that you brought up how you repost and share what the players are saying about coming to the Seahawks and even from what they've seen and witnessed from even just last year's team. And Rodney Thomas spoke in an interview earlier. He just said, you could turn on the tape randomly and everybody on the defense, they're celebrating. You can't tell who made the play because everybody's excited for the guy beside them. Like, what an awesome way to represent this defense. And now 2 defensive players added to the Seahawks secondary. Rob, what does that maybe change or tell you about what their plans might be for the draft?
I think that it's pretty established what the plan might be here, because they did this a year ago. Obviously, they obviously had a look at the veteran offensive line market and seemed to be quite interested in Will Fries, which was understandable. He was the best zone fit on the O-line, but then they didn't feel pressured they had to go and sign him. The Vikings obviously gave him a huge guaranteed contract without even doing a medical. Medicals seem to be quite important these days in the NFL world, and they didn't give him one, and ultimately probably should have done. And then the Seahawks move on, and there were quite a few people on X saying it's terrible. Like, what are the Seahawks doing? But I think they kind of had a degree of confidence that when they get to the draft, the offensive line options, and it wasn't just Gray Zabel, Donovan Jackson went a few picks later, fun enough, to Minnesota, and there was some players in round 2 that could have been of interest as well. They had 2 second-round picks. So I think they felt like, look, the options are there. We can address this. We do like the options that are available to us. We're not going to panic. And right now you look at it and there are 3 key positions. It is running back, it is cornerback, and it is replacing Boye Mafe. They've those 3 areas, replacing the players they've lost, Reed Woolen as well and Ken Walker, feel like the ones that they can target. And 2 of those positions, defensive end and cornerback, are 2 of the deeper ones alongside receiver in this draft. So they've probably set it up on purpose to be able to address these positions, at least 2 of those positions in this draft class. Running back's really thin, which is why I think maybe they will feel like you take Jadarian Price, potentially. We can get a cornerback in round 2 or round 3. We can get a pass rusher in round 2 or round 3. And if you can't get a pass rusher, we'll definitely get a cornerback. We can just call Von Miller after the draft. So I feel like they've set things up to be quite effective in filling the voids that are left. In the meantime, why not take a chance on a former first-round pick who's definitely got a lot of talent, maybe hasn't quite been able to put it together? Sounds a bit like Josh Jobe, frankly, who they brought in and have refined. You know, he was good at Alabama, but they've kind of brought him along. You know, if they can do that with Noah and bring him along, notice I didn't attempt to say his second name, but Noah, bringing him in, you know, I think you've got an amazing defensive backs coach in Carl Scott, got a very talented defensive staff in Seattle. It's great to see them sort of taking some chances on some safeties and some cornerbacks who are not going to cost them, you know, comp picks to bring them in and see what they can do in training camp and add to the competition.
And going off of that, you saw what the Seahawks defense was able to do with the Ready Squad. It's what Mike McDonald calls his practice squad, and guys really stepping up like Ty Okada. And now look at the role that he has for the Seattle Seahawks when other players went down. Mike, when you think about this coaching staff's ability to take guys who might not be household names and be confident in that, what stands out to you about their ability to do that?
Yeah, that actually like Drake is probably the other guy I would say who just does a thing really well, which is just come downhill. And you know, as Rob knows, when you do this draft stuff, once you get past like what the best 12 guys in the draft probably every year, but on average, all these guys are like really have a superpower or two, and then like a bunch of stuff they don't do well, or just short arms, slow feet, bad eyes, whatever. Maybe it's a medical thing. But once you get like in rounds 2 through 7, maybe I'd say even 3 through 7, it becomes like, all right, he has a superpower. Can we maximize it? And I think the staff has done a really good job of taking some guys and doing that. Like Drake Thomas, I think, is a really good example. Like Drake's a missile. He is. He probably doesn't do a bunch of stuff super well, but it's like, you know what he does do? He comes downhill super quick. If you tell him where to go, what gap to hit, and just tell him when to shoot it and why he's shooting it, because he's a guy who wants to understand the why behind it. Well, he can make a bunch of plays, and go look at all the TFLs he had. And he had some good coverage plays as well. But I think that's where your coaching staff really can separate you from other teams. Like, all right, everybody has something they're good at. You know, like I mentioned Josh Jobe or like Ty Okada, guys who are just like, they do a thing well. Like you're in the NFL for a reason. Like I love talking to guys on the practice squad or on the bottom of the roster because they are there for a reason. A lot of these guys were all conference or they're the number of their jerseys retired at their high school. Like they're the dude. They do something well. And that's just a scrub. You don't get the NFL by accident. And it's like, all right, what is the thing that got you here? And can we maximize it? And sometimes it doesn't always work out. Like the thing that got Derek Young to the NFL, he's built like an action figure, right? He's super fast, and that just really never got maximized because of the other talent they had at receiver. But he had a thing. He did. He was super fast, super big, and kind of built like Diet DK a little bit. And so like, okay, how can we maximize that? Now again, that didn't go super well for him, but like it was the superpower was there. Jake Bobo. His superpower clearly wasn't the speed, but Jake's like one of the best route runners on the team. Like, how can we maximize that? And I'm starting to see there's more proof of concept with that now on the defense with Mike McDonald, which is why they hired him. You know, they saw the same thing in Baltimore. They were like, look at how many guys who are just kind of guys. Mike McDonald shows up and they're guys. You know, Geno Stone was just kind of whatever before Mike McDonald showed up. Brandon Stevens at corner was just kind of whatever. Nnamdi Matabuke had some good seasons, but then he was like, oh my God, all pro. Mike McDonald gets a hold of him. Clowney dusted the cobwebs off in Baltimore. Even Patrick Queen was like just like a decent guy. He was all pro when Mike McDonald showed up. So he was like that floor raiser. And now you're seeing it. And how do you raise that floor? Like, all right, figure out the thing he does well, figure out the thing we like on the scouting report, and then try to just hammer that home, which is also why the more I've studied their free agency and how they moved, like, I can see it. I can see why you're like, you know what? As much as I love Kobe, that's probably the one I regret them not doing the most is bringing back Kobe. It's like I can see why a team's like, you know what, man, we really believe in our staff and we can maximize this Ty Okada thing. We can maximize this Max and Hook thing. He's another guy on a futures deal. We can maximize the Rodney Thomas thing. You know, I see it. Whether they get it right or not, they don't always get it right. You know, for every Josh Jobe, there's a Kevon Wallace or Jerome Baker. Every move does not hit. The staff doesn't have a magic button to just maximize all the guys, but they've done it enough that they've earned the benefit of the doubt for me.
Well, Mike, you named the name and hashtag more Bobo. There will be more Jake Bobo. Love the lineup that the Seahawks are bringing back. We mentioned Jake Bobo, George Holani coming back, obviously Rashid Shaheed, Josh Jones, tackle, Drake Thomas, you mentioned. Super Bowl game day captain Brady Russell will be back. D'Anthony Bell, Brandon Pilley, and Chris Stoll keeping some consistency in the specialist room, and Chaz Surratt we heard later tonight. A guy that I was super excited about to hear was Brady Russell. Mike McDonald's called him one of the best core 4 combo guys in the league. Guys follow his league. His energy every day is contagious. He said his love for the game unselfish, tough as nails. And I saw that guy's hand Super Bowl week. He had a massive scar. Like, tough as nails does not do that justice. But Rob, when you look at this list for who the Seahawks are bringing back, who they already had on the team, what name jumps out for you?
I think it was just great to see some people like Drake Thomas, rewarded, and great to see them back, and all of those players, it goes to show that this is very much a team sport, and I think this is the one thing. There's not the one thing. There's quite a few things that watching the Seahawks this year have kind of made you reassess how you view the NFL. Like, for so long, you would just assume. I mean, I certainly would, that you have to have a certain type of quarterback, and it has to be like one of the best 2 or 3. And if you don't have that, then you need some like unbelievable legendary defense. And like, it has to be like the 85 Bears or the LOB, or you've got no chance. Like, this idea that you could have just like a really rounded roster, and that it can be achievable, not necessarily by hitting on every single draft pick for 5 years and unbelievable fortune or anything like this, but these role players that you have, getting them to reach a level surrounding your starters to which you can achieve what the Seahawks achieved, that by the end of the season, they were clearly the best overall roster in the NFL and just kind of swatted the Patriots aside in that Super Bowl. I just think it's testament to everything that this team has been doing and the individuals involved. And it's great to see them all coming back. Like, I bring it on. I wish they could have brought everybody back, frankly. It's a shame that they haven't, but they've limited the damage, and now it's about sort of replenishing the stocks. So whether you do that with a trade, or whether you do that with just going into the draft and then sort of seeing what's left after the draft in the veteran market, I'm feeling pretty good about this team. There's nothing. I think maybe there was a little bit of a sense of, the Rams are doing things and the Niners are doing things. And I have to say, I don't feel that lacking in any confidence of what's happened. Like, the Chiefs just gave away 2 cornerbacks to the Rams. Like, if they were that good, the Chiefs would have kept them. So nothing bothering me too much. I'm pretty happy with the way this team is, and I think they're in a good spot.
Mike, has your attention been swayed at all by what other teams are doing and taking maybe your eyes off of what Seattle's transactions have been?
Oh, I do. I'm high on the Rams offseason. It makes all the sense in the world to me. I think they have, from a talent perspective, their roster is just as good as the Seahawks. Honestly, it was like only like a tick behind last year, to be honest. Like, you look at this from the Rams' perspective, the last 2 years, they've given the defending champions, or the eventual champions, their toughest playoff game. Like, they took the Eagles down to the wire there a couple years ago in Philly. They were a couple plays away from beating those guys, and then that was the toughest game the Eagles played. They beat the snot out of pretty much everyone else on the NFC Championship, and then in the Super Bowl as well. And then the Seahawks, it was the same way. The toughest game they really just played all year really was the games against the Rams, all 3 of them. But the NFC Championship was easily their toughest playoff game. And then I'm a little biased on Jalen Watson, go Cougs. One of the corners that they signed. But also I think Trent McDuffie is a baller as well. The Chiefs just kind of have that stance. They're very similar to John and running backs. They're just like, we're not paying no DBs. No matter how good you are, we'll let the safeties walk. They traded Jarius Sneed. Like, they're just like, cool, we'll just draft another one. Whether that strategy is great or not, whatever. Yeah, I trust your scouting department. But it's worked out for them so far. But I'm high on them because I think the Rams – I see if I was Les Snead, the GM of the Rams, I'd be like, guys, we're right there. We're very clearly there. Like, we got the quarterback. Their offense is fine. Their problem last year, what was it? Defense.
The Seahawks.
Particularly, well, yes, it was having to go to Seattle and try to stop their offense. They were just getting bombs away by Sam. Sam Darnold had the best game he's ever had because their DBs weren't very good. Well, for several reasons, but that was one of them. Like, Kobe Durant, not a good player. He was getting picked on all playoffs. He's number 14, the guy Bobo scored The guy Cole Kmet scored on as well on that play in Chicago. They had to replace him. Darius Williams had to retire. They just couldn't play him anymore. And then they replaced him with two guys who are worlds better. So I think they had an obvious weakness, addressed it. I think that they're always been high on their coaching staff. The Rams coaching staff is very good. Obviously, their offensive coaching staff is very good. Like, look at what they were able to do. So I think the Seahawks and Rams are just like here for me in the NFC. I think they're both really good. Coaches are really good. And if the Seahawks ever had the Super Bowl in Lumen, I would want them to just say F them picks too and just like, hey, let's go get this thing like the Rams are doing. That's an added incentive. The last time they won the Super Bowl was in their building, doing it, trying to go for it again. I still think the Seahawks, like, if they all play tomorrow, Seahawks probably win, but all three games were like very as coin flip as it gets. So that team, I have a lot of respect for what they've done this offseason. The Niners, I actually like their moves as well. I was just reading something like they probably might sign the other Bosa, which would be good for their front as well. My problem is I'm unfairly penalizing them for like the substation stuff and just staying healthy. It's unfair. I just look at who they sign. I'm like, none of you guys are going to play in January because they just seem to be cursed. But just on paper, that's a good team as well. I love the Mike Evans pickup for them. That's something they needed. It was a very, very obvious flaw. They just couldn't. The wide receivers tape against the Seahawks DBs in the playoffs was some of the nastiest stuff you'll see as a Niners fan. A bunch of DeMarcus Robinson not being able to run around reek. It just looked terrible. So what do you know? You go get Mike Evans. So I like their moves, like the defensive tackle they traded for. The Seahawks are still the best team, I think, in the NFC. And their coaching staff is very solid. But I do think the Rams in particular, like if there was a Rams collective show having this convo and being like the Rams are the best team in the NFC, I wouldn't be inclined to like hop in and argue. That's a very good team.
Hey, we're having a duel. We're going not just you hopping in and arguing. We're going Rob, Mike. We're going to get Brian back on the show, and then I'll just be there to kind of navigate the whole situation. But Rob, we might have to take the blinders off of you because Mike clearly is letting us know who the threats in the division are. But before we wrap up today, I do want to ask you a little bit of the offensive line because the consistency for the Seattle Seahawks is quite insane to basically be returning their entire starting offensive line and even some of the second string players for them. What advantage do you see this being just to have that, locked and squared away for the offseason? Or do you think they'll add anybody in the draft?
I think it's an unbelievable advantage. I think it's something that's really underrated for a team. The Seahawks went through a stretch. I can't remember. I wrote about it a year ago, but it was something like 6 consecutive seasons where they had a different center starting. And to actually be able to go into this season with the same center and the same quarterback is a bonus. But you actually have, with Cross signed up and Lucas signed, and Zabelon has still got a lot of his rookie contract left. You've got 3 pieces there that are locked down for the fairly long term. There's no real reason to think that Sundell couldn't join them. And then with Anthony Bradford, he's got 1 year left in his contract. Now, I think I've not been one of those people who wants to point a finger at Anthony Bradford all the time, like every time he did something wrong, because it did feel a little bit like there are maybe 30% of what he does is quite good. 30% of what he does is really bad. And then there's kind of a lot in the middle, and it's quite easy to highlight the good or the bad. But, they won the Super Bowl with this guy at right guard. And if you notice, whenever they scored a rushing touchdown in the playoffs, they were like, he was the one like lifting the running back up, which I've always kind of felt meant something. It was like symbolic of the team. I don't know if they were just going to rally in around Anthony Bradford because of the grief that he gets online, but it felt symbolic that he was always the one lifting the running back into the air once they'd scored. He was the first one to go there and do that. So I think they're supportive of him. His teammates have kind of got his back. I don't think they have to replace him. It comes down to the value. Like if you get to a point in the draft where you think this player is really good, we will be beneficial, will really benefit from taking him, then I understand that. But the player that interests me, this is apologies to Mike because I am going to bring up a Washington Husky here. But there's an offensive lineman called Carver Willis.
Yes, come on. I interviewed him for Sports Spectrum at the Senior Bowl. Love the guy.
Yeah.
Get him on your list, Rob. Get him on your list.
Can I tell you a little story about him?
Please.
So I was told this recently. So he, let me find it. he when he first, because obviously he transferred, didn't he, from Kansas State, and when he first got to Seattle, the team, Washington, got an email from a fire station captain in the city. And what the email said was that the captain and the whole of the fire station crew were out at a restaurant. And Carver Willis spots them, walks up and introduces himself, thanked them for their service, and then paid the bill for all 14 of the firefighters as he walked out of the restaurant.
Wow.
And you know, that was pretty remarkable. And I've been digging around him for a while because he's one of the better zone blocking linemen in college last year, very high grade. His tape is really good. You know, even against some of the tougher opponents that Washington played last year, he just seems ideally suited to kicking inside and playing a bit of guard. So and he tested very well. So he's somebody to keep an eye on, and maybe he will be available a lot later in the draft than maybe some of these other offensive linemen. I'm down for seeing Carver Willis in Seattle. By the sounds of things, you were quite impressed with him as well when you spoke to him.
Let's go. I'm excited that that's a guy that you're all about. And yeah, stay tuned. I think the interview drops in 2 or 3 weeks. Carver Willis at the Senior Bowl, really just talking about the confidence that he had walking in there. And yeah, definitely a respectable human. So stay tuned on Sports Spectrum for that. But Mike, what do you have going on this week that the 12s can keep up with?
Actually, I want to hear from the 12s. You know, I love this time of the year. I actually really don't like doing mailbags on The Athletic, mostly because it's not like a work thing. It's because people ask so many good questions and we have like word count limits, right? So I'll post one and be like, I get 45 questions, and then I'm like letting 30 people down, you know, like ignoring them. So I hate doing them. But right now I'm doing it. I have my last post on X and on Blue Sky are both just, hey, submit your questions. So I want to hear like what people think about the offseason, maybe some of the topics we've addressed here, maybe some other stuff. Like I've been doing this job now, like as a pro writer for over 10 years, and I'll never give up on just like being able to get a good idea from the fans. Like just because I'm here to serve the listeners or the readers, right? So when they say, you know, Mike, I'm really curious about this, sometimes I'm like, you know what? Then I shall write about it. So send me what you got. Probably drop that on Thursday. Chris and I have our latest episode of the Seahawks Man to Man pod. That's out now, kind of giving our thoughts, like an expanded version of some of the stuff we've talked about here on free agency and where the Seahawks stand and versus the Rams and the Niners and maybe even like Bears and Eagles, because they're the hunted now. So it's not as just like, all right, did you get better? All right, well, everybody else is chasing you too and making moves out here, you know, and trying to catch up to you. So how well did that go for the rest of the league? So Chris and I, that's available wherever you get your podcast. That's up now, and then I'll have a mailbag later this week. And I'm slowly but surely getting into my Rob bag and getting caught up on the draft class. I am now that I really know which needs they have, and I can kind of hone in on certain position groups. I'll probably have a big board next week. Probably another mock here. I'm gonna get in the flow. I've been a little slower because of some of the other stuff I'm working on, but I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
Well, Rob, you're helping even the best of the best on the Seahawks coverage. What do you have coming up this week?
We've got a lot of things. So actually, there's a lot of stuff that's been on there the last few days, which I could sort of steer people towards. You know, a big look on the Seahawks offseason so far and what could happen next is on there. There is a long video I did back in a 90-minute stream over the weekend talking about the plan for the 2026 draft. And then I thought, I won't write about that because I've done a video on it. And then I ended up writing a whole bloody article about it on Sunday. So that's on there. And then I thought I'm going to have Monday off. I'm not going to, I lecture on a Monday with a class. And then I come home and I was going to chill out, not do anything. And then I ended up writing a 3,000 word scouting notes piece. So I'm kind of addicted to it. So if you go on there, and there's all sorts of notes. I've got 211 players on the board. I've got about another 35 players that I really want to study before the draft. So that'll easily get done. So I will keep doing the scouting notes, keep putting those up there, and a lot of other stuff. So please do check out SeahawksDraftBlog.com, and it's all free. There's no adverts on there. So just check it out. It's just for the love of the game.
For the love of the game. I love it. And hopefully we'll have the guy that we love, Brian Nemhauser, back on next week. And you can stay tuned with the Sports Spectrum What's Up podcast, which is a podcast that I host because we have a Seattle Seahawk, a guy that you mentioned the significance of having the same center, Jalen Sundell. came on the What's Up podcast with me. He has an incredible story. Just based, not even scratch the Super Bowl, how he just got to the NFL. So you definitely need to tune into that and what all these guys have coming up. But thanks so much for tuning in with us tonight. We have more football on Tuesday. Good night and go Seahawks.